Hi, my friends. Welcome to Inside the Minds of Authors. I'm DC Gomez, your host, and also an indie author. I'm thrilled you're joining me today for another fun interview with a passionate author. We're going to kick off this show with an exciting reading, so let's get started.
Hi, my name is Margie Miklas, and I'm the author of A Cure for Deceit. It's a medical thriller, a sequel to my first medical thriller, A Critical Cover-Up. The inspiration came from my lifelong career as a cardiovascular ICU nurse, and it's written from the perspective of Allison Jameson, the central character who is a critical care nurse. I'll be reading from chapter 8. Dr. Kumar answered a call from the cardiovascular operating room, CVOR. A frantic female spoke with urgency. Dr. Kumar, we need you stat in CVOR. Dr. Tamarino and Annette have Mr. Fellner open and had to put him on bypass. I'll be right there. I'm by the CSU exit door. What could have happened? All Tamarino had to do was find the bleeding source, repair the damage, and then close the chest. Allison's recent remarks burned in his mind as he rushed toward the surgical suite. Inside the steel double doors, he rounded the corner and knocked on the window to alert them of his presence. Without wasting any time, he scrubbed in and entered OR room 2. Annette and Kumar established eye contact, and she shook her head. The tension in the air hovered like a heavy cloud. Kumar could see Tamarino's hands deep inside the patient's chest, while the cardiopulmonary bypass machine maintained blood flow. No one spoke a word. Lucky I hadn't left for home yet. What's going on? I need you here, Kumar. In a quieter voice, Tamarino admitted. I can't catch a break this week. I found a bleeder on one of the grafts, the posterior descending artery. Nothing I did made it stop. We had to put him on pump for me to redo the graft. In the process, I nicked the marginal artery, and now we need to bypass that one too. I can use another pair of eyes and hands. Kumar stayed silent and began working alongside Tamarino to repair the damage. Annette repositioned herself down by the patient's leg to help the surgical nurse retrieve more of the femoral vein to be used as the graft. Kumar focused on the surgical field in front of him, but could not erase what seemed to be an indelible image seared into his memory. Anxiety crept in as he considered the possibility of Allison reporting his partner. Having their practice exposed in a negative light would be devastating. Mr. Fellner's straightforward case now veered far from textbook, and the morbidity risk increased. Not a good thing at all. Kumar anticipated Tamarino would be under increased scrutiny at the next Mortality and Morbidity Committee meeting coming up this week. All of a sudden, Dr. Tamarino shouted, "Shit, what happened here?" In an instant, massive bleeding filled the open chest cavity, and despite suctioning and clamping off bleeders, the never-ending blood flow escalated. I can't see where this is coming from. Fuck. Without responding verbally, Kumar explored and prodded every way he could as he hoped to determine the origin of the bloodbath. Trying to keep his gloved hands away from his partners in that small space of a chest cavity, he strengthened his efforts. The perfusionist transfused copious amounts of products through the machine's circuit in an attempt to replace the massive blood loss. With the swirling pool of red in his visual field, finding the graft alone developed into a huge challenge. The intricacy of suturing a vein graft to the coronary artery and then the aorta was all but unachievable. Bathed in blood, the surgical field became almost inaccessible. Powerless to curtail the rapid blood loss, Tamarino and Kumar stared at each other. The inevitable outcome faced them head on. An intraoperative nightmare, the hemorrhage prevailed. Mr. Fellner became another statistic.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Inside the Minds of Authors. Today, we have the amazing Miss Margie with us. Hello, madam. How are you?
Hi, DC. I'm fine. And thank you so much for this great opportunity.
It is such a pleasure to have you. And by the way, I'm like sitting at the edge of my seat with this book. I was like, oh, everything just sounds painfully horrible. I was like, oh my God. Let's get started because you have me captivated. You were a nurse you have hopefully not seen these drastic cases, but tell us, what inspired you for these books? Because this is your second one in this series. Tell us about it.
Well, it came from my longtime career of a critical care nurse. I wanted to write about some corruptive practices I observed in the hospital and wanted people to see the behind the scenes, but I didn't want to make a documentary. I decided to make a novel and decided to make it a thriller. So I wrapped a story around it. But all of the medical and surgical situations in the book are authentic and real life situations, many of which I have experienced. And I've actually had readers wonder about that and say they're kind of scared to see that some of these things actually happen in hospitals.
It's a tad bit traumatizing. I had the honor of serving in a quality committee for one of our local hospitals here. And when you listen to everything that goes behind the scenes, it makes you want to be like, I never want to go to a hospital in my life. This is traumatizing. But there's also so much amazing things that you guys do every day that people have no clue. Why a thriller?
Well, I don't know. I guess I just wanted to keep people interested and keep them on the edge of their seats. And I like to read thrillers. I like the twists and turns and the surprises. And I just wanted to create a book where there would be changes coming up all of the time. I kind of wrote it in the vein of a Robin Cook novel.
You are definitely keeping us at the edge of our seats because I'm like, whew, this description of blood everywhere is like, oh my God, I feel horrible in so many different ways.
It is a
You were
little bit hard for some people to read the medical parts of it. I've had people tell me that. And so there are sections. The one I just read is probably one of the more gorier scenes, but a lot of it does not have that in there. There's quite a bit of other things that go on, especially with the antagonist. This Dr. Tamarino really gets in a lot of trouble. He becomes the target of this clandestine investigation that Allison starts up against him. So that's where the gist of the book goes.
when your main characters run the OR and they're operating, you had the doctor look at her and knew this was going to happen. Did you do that on purpose? Does she have a record that she's going to be start submitting investigations for this doctor to be like, oh God, my
Well,
practice is over?
funny to say that. I don't believe that the doctors really think that way because especially surgeons and particularly cardiovascular surgeons and these specialty surgeons, they sort of have a God complex. And really, when they walk in the room, they have saved many lives. And most of the patients they've had good outcomes. And so they feel like they are almost like a God. So they don't really ever admit to any of this kind of self-doubt or questioning themselves. Although you'll see with Dr. Tamarino that this really bothered him, but he has quite a few ways of denying what's really going on.
I like going behind the scenes in the mind of your characters and giving a perspective that sometimes, like you said, there's a God complex, but we also see them as patients, as gods. We're hoping that, please, God, know what you're doing and not just be practicing with me. So it's a really interesting take on this world that we live in and put it into perspective. Did you had a message specifically besides going behind the scenes?
Well, I did have a message. I wanted to make Allison and a couple of the other characters strong female lead characters because I always like to encourage people to do whatever they want to do, and especially women. I like to encourage them to know that they can make anything happen if they want it badly enough. I actually didn't start writing books until I was over the age of 60. And so, for people who think, oh, I can't do that, I'm too old, I want people to know that they can do anything they want if they are disciplined and if they put enough effort into it. So that was one of the messages. And the other message is I wanted to explain that most of the people in the hospitals are wanting to do good and they help each other and they work together, they have a camaraderie. And then when there is something wrong, it's upsetting to them and they have to decide how to handle it. A lot of the times, if you report something, it really doesn't go anywhere, or there's like a code of silence with doctors. They don't ever report another doctor. So it's sort of like a waste of time. But yet you have to decide ethically, what do you do? And that's where a lot of the book goes. Most hospitals have ethics hotlines and things like that. And just really from my experience, none of that ever really goes anywhere. And most people who work there know those things. And so you either give up or you decide to fight and you have to weigh the pros and cons. Maybe your career is going to be jeopardized if you're exposed as a whistleblower. So I put all of that in here. And then the good thing about writing fiction is you can embellish things and you can make other things up. So some of these things really happen, but other things I just created the scenarios, or I created what happened because that's the joy of fiction, as you know.
It is the beautiful part to create an entertaining story and very engaging is that you have to add some stuff to it. So I love the fact that you were able to mix real stories with your imagination and bring this together. So that is beautiful.
Thank
So
you.
this is your second book in this series. Are you planning to do more? Is this going to be a continuation? What do we got?
Actually, I always planned to do another book, and then I had to take sort of a year off because I had some personal issues that I had to deal with. I have my mom living with me now. She's elderly, and so I knew I had to take a little bit of time. But recently, I've just started plotting the third book. And of course, Allison Jameson is the main character, and one other character will be following her, and then I'll have some new characters in the book too. So I just began plotting it, hoping to have that out sometime in 2022.
How difficult was to write the second book compared to your first?
It was easier in one way and harder in another way. It was easier because I already knew the characters and I knew certain things that I wanted to include in the book, but I wanted the book to be a lot better than the first one. I wanted it to really be getting all of those twists and turns and surprises that really are in a thriller. And so I did a lot of research. I read about how to write thrillers and what to do as far as making them even better than what you had done. I took more time with it, I guess, and I developed the characters a little bit more. And I like that I was able to do that. And then I was totally shocked in October when that book won the Florida Writers Association's silver medal for thrillers. I was really surprised because it was a very competitive field, and I never thought that it would be that good. It's validating. It's really nice to know that you have done a good job because I think writers, they think the book is good when they're reading it, and now it's an audio book, so I'm listening to it and I have a narrator that narrated it, and yeah, I think it sounds really good. But you never really know until you hear feedback from people, till people that read it or listen to it tell you, or if an organization that awards things will honor you with that.
Well, congratulations on the award. That is super exciting.
Thank
And
you.
you are correct. It's one thing for us to hear our work and hear what we're doing because we understand them from a different perspective. But when you have readers, when you have your peers, and when you have organizations that do this for a living, say, no, this is definitely good. It's really exciting. It's just, as you said, validating. That is awesome.
Thanks, DC.
You said you started writing later in life, which is amazing and exciting. Have you always thought about putting it into words? Because sometimes we start late, but we've been thinking about it for a while.
Well, I wasn't really always thinking about writing a book, but I have on occasion written things. And I actually started back when I was a child. I wrote limericks with my cousin when we were kids.
Ah,
And then in high school, I was the headline editor of the newspaper. And then when I had a job as a nurse in a hospital across the state, I created a comical, satirical newsletter for the staff. And I used to write letters to the editor. So I always have been doing some writing. The books really never came to be until I wrote a blog. I went to Italy by myself when I was over 60 for 3 months. And I planned it out and studied Italian for a year and a half and took a leave of absence from work, saved my money, and went alone because I didn't think anybody else would be able to go for that amount of time with me. I started a blog at that time so my family and my friends could see what I was doing. And that's where I started that type of writing. And I was doing a little bit of content writing online too for travel type of writing. So after the trip, I realized I had a lot more to say. And so then I wrote my first book, which was a travel memoir, Memoirs of a Solo Traveler, My Love Affair with Italy. That was my very first book. I've written several Italy travel memoirs. And it wasn't until after writing three of those and another book about Italy that I decided I was going to try this genre of fiction. And they always say to stick with the same genre. So I didn't really know how it would go, but I'm really happy that it's going well and like it and want to continue writing fiction. Although I will admit that it was much harder for me to write fiction after having written the nonfiction, because the nonfiction, you know the story. If it's a memoir, you know what happened and you can describe what you've seen and done. But in fiction, you have to create the story, create the plot, and do all of that. And it took me quite some time to figure out how to do that.
I'm a huge traveler. So taking that leap of faith, I think, is incredible. And you spent 3 months in Italy. What did make you take this trip? That's kind of my curious. Like, When did you decide, I'm going to Italy for 3 months?
Well, what
Deuces,
happened,
everybody.
I always kind of wanted to go, but I never really went because I didn't know the language. And then one year, my brother and sister-in-law who had been there invited me to go with them. So I thought, well, this is good because they've already been there, so it'll be good to go with somebody. So the first time I went, I fell in love with it. And we went to Sicily, where my grandparents are from. I'm 100% second generation Italian. So I was very interested. And we were able to go and see where his house was because I had done some genealogical work and I met a cousin over there. So I fell in love with Italy. So then I decided to go again and I booked a cruise with a friend and we went. We were supposed to go to the top of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, but she decided not to go that day. So I decided, well, I'm going alone. So I went by myself. And actually, on the way back to the train station, a person asked me directions, and I was able to give them in Italian to that person. So that made me realize, hey, I could be here by myself and do this. I could go. And that's what did it. And then of course, I always wanted to keep going back. So that's when I decided I'm going to go alone and I'm going to go all over the place, wherever I want, for as long as I want. And that's what started it. And since all of this, I've been there 12 times now, all in the matter of the last 12 years. It started from never having traveled to Italy to like wanting to go as often as I can.
I absolutely love it. And I'm like, 12 times. I'm so behind the power curve. I'm like, what do I need to do? I am so in love with the fact that you just took these leaps and you let your creativity just take over. It is beautiful. I love the fact that you have books about it, that people can pick them up and go on this adventure with you and fall in love with Italy.
Well, that's what my intent was. I wrote it in first person present tense so that you feel like you're with me while I'm there. And that's what everybody says to me, that they feel they're there. And people that have been there, it brings back memories for them. People that can't travel anymore but maybe have been there love to read it, or people who just never have gone but want to go. So I've reached a lot of people that way, and I have a blog that I write, Margie in Italy, and so I'm always putting things up about Italy because it's really my passion.
I want your thrillers to take you to Italy. Like, I want a murder scene in Italy. I don't know how, but let's combine these two things into one because that would be amazing.
Well, I've had other people say that, and it's on my mind, believe me. That's all I'll say.
Hey, you're passionate about both. I was like, yes, there has to be a murder mystery. You can write the Da Vinci Code. I'm okay with this. Let's make this happen. So, madam, you have so much different things that you can pull from. What was the biggest lessons you learned when you decided to start writing?
The biggest lesson was that I really had to be disciplined. I really had to make time. I was retired, but well, not when I started, I wasn't retired. No, I wasn't retired then. So I really had to even balance the time even more. And I think balancing the time between your life, your family, your work, and wanting to write is a big challenge. So now I am retired, but I still, when I'm writing, I set time aside. I figure out how many words I want the book to be. Then I calculate it down to like, okay, well, when do I want it to be going to the editor? So how much, write every day and or every week. And I kind of calculate it out. And then I go someplace where it's quiet. I turn my phone off. I turn everything off. I go to the beach. I do something like that where I'm not going to be distracted for maybe 3 or 4 hours. I learned that I have to do that because otherwise I'm a good procrastinator and then nothing gets done. So I have to say that that was probably the biggest thing I learned. And it's probably the best thing I do as far as writing is that I am disciplined.
A lot of times we wait to the last minute to get the words out, and it's hard to edit a blank page. I tried, trust me, doesn't work really well.
And I also tell people too, they always say, well, what I want to write stuff, what I said, well, just start writing. Just have a journal, just start writing whatever you're thinking about. Don't worry about any grammar. Don't worry about what order you put it. Just start writing through whatever you're thinking about, or even recording it into your phone and then transcribing it later. Start writing later, then you can outline how you want your book to be and you can make stories out of it and then have somebody edit it and it will fall into place. But you have to start.
That's an awesome advice. I've seen a lot of aspiring authors that get stuck in the thinking process. They get stuck in like, I need a perfect outline or I need a perfect background story for these characters, and the story never gets done. So I love it. It's just start somewhere.
Yeah.
get it going.
And actually, for this one, I said that I'm plotting it out. Well, I had to get started plotting something because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I still don't know like how it's going to end. Usually, I just get started with the beginning and I have a little bit of an idea of how it's going to end, but most of it really happens as I'm writing
You are definitely a pantser. You're going to fly by the seats of your pants.
it.
So that's pretty exciting. Have you considered working in other types of genres or other series?
No, I really haven't. I really haven't. I don't think so. That hasn't been something on my mind.
It is all good, not a big issue. You're having fun right now. You're creating this universe and you're exploring it, which is very exciting. So you kind of already touched base on it. If you have to get a brand new author an advice, besides start writing, what else would you tell them?
I would tell them to just believe in themselves. And if they really want to do this, to not lose sight of their dream. Don't let anybody tell them no, that they can't do it. Just find a way that they're going to be able to do it and make it happen, whatever it takes. If it takes setting aside time, if it takes doing research, whatever it takes for them, I would just tell them believe in yourself and things will happen. It's not easy. You have to work at it, but everything that's worthwhile in life, you have to put time into it.
That is very, very true and very accurate. Sometimes we want it to come from the sky. Not going to happen. So, Madame, where can our listeners find more about you, where they can learn more about the books?
Okay, well, they can go to my blog, Margie in Italy, which is https://margieinaitaly.com. Or they could find my books on Amazon and Audible. If you just Google me, you'll find me. I'm on all social media also.
So, listeners, you can find Ms. Margie, you can find the books, you can also find this awesome blog about Italy because I'm going, ooh, that's absolutely exciting. Madam, it has been such an honor. And besides the blood part of the book that had me a little twisted a little, it has been so much fun. Before you leave us, are you ready to switch gears a little?
Yes,
We're going to our lightning round. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Easy peasy. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Nice. Pirate or knight?
Night.
Okie dokie. Home cooked meals or takeout?
Home cooked meals.
Ah, that's awesome. Here is our last one. Let's see how you do. And you've been to Italy, so this should be very interesting. If you had one food that best described you, what would it be?
Ice cream.
Do you have any closing remarks for us?
I just wanted to say thank you for offering authors this opportunity, DC. It's really nice that you do this, and it's very special, and I really appreciate it. And you do such a great job. I appreciate it so much. I had a good time.
It has been a pleasure. This is probably one of the most fun I get to have every time I get to meet. It is. I can honestly say that. I'm like a little kid. I am a book lover. So anytime I get to talk to authors and honestly get inside your minds and what motivates you to write this and where these stories come from is really, really exciting and is a true honor for me and a true pleasure. So I am excited you join us. Thank you, Madame.
It was a lot of fun.
Woohoo! See, that's what we want to hear. To our listeners, make sure you check out Margie in Italy. It's going to be fabulous. Make sure you check out the book. Give us a like and go back to your favorite listening device. You're listening on us. Give us a like, share it with your friends, tell them about it. Know that it's always better when we grow together. If you're interested in still supporting the podcast because you love us, make sure you check out the Patreon group, www.patreon.com/author DC Gomez. You can find us, give us some support, give us some love, and I'll see you guys all again next week with another inspiring author. Thank you guys.